Hi, and welcome to the Behavioral Business Blueprint, where we dive into the world of behavioral health entrepreneurship. We have a special treat. I've been following this person on social media for the past few years and have truly enjoyed how not how she not only shows how she's working with families and giving them tips, but also on handling behavior with her own kids, which I've truly enjoyed that, and I'm learning some things too that I actually put into my own practice. So this person owns their own behavioral health company, Crystal Minds, in the Miami area. Today, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Monica Gilbert. How are you doing today?
Hi, Arthur. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to speak a little bit about my journey and hopefully it helps other people out there.
Yes. So my first question I always start off is, when do you sleep? And I ask this question because I know as an entrepreneur, you're doing a million things. Even though you're probably delegating items, at the end of the day, it still comes on you to do things.
So when do I sleep? Arthur, I sleep when my eyes close. That's when I start sleeping. I'm not sure when you start sleeping. But no, I mean, a lot of people ask that. I'm something that I think I'm really good at doing, well, sleeping, but going to sleep early. So trying my best to go to sleep at about 10:30ish because I have to wake up the next morning and I mean this works for me. Like at night I do better with paperwork, but then in the morning is when I have my full energy. So that's what I want to like use in order to dedicate to just being creative and putting more things together. So one thing I'm really strict at is going to sleep at 10:30. It's actually funny because when I go out with friends, right, it backfires because in Miami people go out at 11 and I'm already like, no, I'm like dying now. I need to go to sleep. But yeah, something that I'm really strict on is going to sleep at 10:30 at night.
And what made you open up your own practice, being down there in Miami? I know there's just a lot of options. What made you go the route of, I'm going to do it myself, which is very scary to do?
So I've always had this entrepreneur mentality. Like when I was in fourth grade back in the day, right? Years ago, I started selling blow pops. I don't know if you remember like the 25 cents like blow pops. Well,
Yeah.
I was that person. I would go to school, I would sell them, and it wasn't really for the money. Like I just loved kind of like creating something and exchanging. I just love that whole concept. So I've always had that. And then when I became I think I was a BCABA first. So when I became a BCABA, I had the opportunity of working with a client privately, and then it just kind of flourished. It wasn't something that I said I'm going to do this. It kind of just happened, and I embraced it, and then I just continued doing it.
And that's just something I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs. Like, it started early as just for fun and just trickled into something bigger, especially to be in the behavioral health world. I mean, you're dealing with insurance, which is a headache.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Yeah. So I see, you post a lot on social media. I don't know how many social media handles you have. I think it was either three or four. I just knew of Crystal Minds. That's the only one I knew. And then I clicked on something, and then it showed me all these other handles. Like, how did you grow your social media following on all these channels?
So I have Dr. Monica Gilbert, DR Monica Gilbert, which is my primary, I guess, handle. That's where I post a lot of the just day to day kind of things that I do. And then I have Crystal Minds New Beginning, which I manage, but I'm going to work with one of my coordinators now. She's going to help me manage it just because it becomes a lot. So I have Crystal Minds New Beginning. I have Crystal Minds Psychological Services, which is the private practice I have where we do psychological services, like, just regular individual therapy. And then I have the MI Doctor, which is where I do the motivational interviewing stuff. So I think the one that I post the most in is the Dr. Monica Gilbert, because that's like the primary one that I've always had. And then the others I kind of post together and all that. And when it comes to the followers, I think as a society, we're so obsessed with like followers and things like that.
Mhm.
I think it's just like I don't really like focus too much on it. I just create content, I put it out there, and then whoever wants to follow because they like the content, because they want to know more about me, because whatever it is, then they just do that, and that's fine.
Yeah. So you mentioned something. You said the motivational interview, and that was like, the question I was going to ask you next. What exactly is motivational interviewing? Because I've seen the term, but I'm googling trying to figure out like what is that.
Arthur, you could have just asked me. I would have told you. So that's actually it's a communication. It's a type of communication, right? It just what motivational interviewing is. It teaches clinicians skills on how to communicate more effectively while still trying to build that rapport with clients and also helping get buy-in from them, right? So motivational interviewing grew from the substance use, substance abuse. Now it's called substance misuse disorders, and it has tons of empirical support. And I learned about it when I was doing my doctoral studies. I worked with substance use population, and my supervisors at that time were very well versed in motivational interviewing. So they basically taught me everything that I know now. And then in working in the field, and I'm sure Arthur that you've dealt with some parents that don't have buy-in, or or even caregivers, because we had spoken about the foster care system, and I know that was one of my challenges, having different caregivers and trying to get them to do the interventions, right? So working with that, I was like, you know what? Let me introduce motivational interviewing into the ABA world. And that's exactly what I did. I started just doing a bunch of different didactics, a bunch of different trainings. I have a bunch of webinars on how we as BCBAs, as behavior analysts, could use motivational interviewing in order to just speak more effectively, more empathetically to the parents or the caregivers that we work with.
Okay, so I have a. You said this substance misuse, which I thought it was substance use disorder, so they've changed it. So now I'm up to date on some terms there. But I want to go back to your social media videos because something that sticks out to me, something that I attempted to do up here in the North Jacksonville area that didn't go as planned, was trying to reach the Spanish speaking population. That was just, it was hard to do because I need to do better at learning another language. But I've seen you post videos, on TV, and you're speaking Spanish and you'll put it in English so I know what you're saying. How how has it been reaching out to the Spanish speaking community? I don't know if you're from Miami, you're already plugged in there, or it's just, people have just met you throughout the time and know, hey, she speaks Spanish fluently too.
Yeah, so I'm a Miamian, as they call it. I lived my entire life in Miami. Actually, when I was 13 years old, so a lot of people don't know this, but when I was 13 years old, I rebelled, as every other teenager I think did. But mine was a little more intense. So my mom at that time, well, my mom, she's still my mom, but at that time, my mom sent me to live in Cuba, and I lived there for 2 years. Imagine, after living my entire life here, I went to Cuba to live for 2 years. And that's where I
Wow.
learned Spanish, because I really didn't fluently speak Spanish living here. And then I came back and I completed my high school and all that. But that's really where I learned Spanish. And I can really say that I'm totally bilingual. Like, I can switch from Spanish, entonces hablar un poco de inglés, speak again Spanish, like just go back and forth. I feel like I'm very, fluent in both languages.
That's amazing. I mean, God, 2 years. I've been to Cuba twice,
Oh, you
and
have
I
been
know,
good.
yes, and I know when I've gone, there's the one time that I really need to speak English because a lot of English speaking people don't go over there, and I've enjoyed my time every time I go to the beaches and just learn the culture. So I'm always just trying to just learn more, but I really do need to learn Spanish so I can be included in the conversations, especially in Miami. I always say when I go through Miami's airport, I'm asking questions and they're looking at me like, you don't speak
Move to
Spanish?
Miami. Move to Miami, and then you will for sure learn. There are certain places in Miami that they don't speak English, right? Like you go to the like Publix or whatever, and they'll tell you, I'm sorry, but I don't speak English. Like say it in Spanish. So if you live in one of those places, you will definitely learn it.
That'll be something I tell my wife we just need to visit more so we can learn. So, how long have you had your practice, your private practice?
So, Crystal Mind's New Beginning, we're going to turn 14 years old at the end of March. So, 14 years.
14.
Yes.
Wow. I thought maybe you're going to say 5, 6, maybe 7, not 14. Okay, so you've been in this for a while. So when you started, Crystal Minds is ABA psychoeducational reviews. So when you started, was ABA really covered much with insurance
So, I
14 years ago?
started, I date myself, right, when I say this, but I started when we, no, commercial insurances did not cover ABA. We had MedWaiver. I don't know if you ever worked with MedWaiver.
Yes. I'm
Okay.
familiar with them, yes.
I feel like when people say like I've worked with MedWaiver, they're like older, right? They're like but anyways, yes, so I started when MedWaiver was a thing, and I don't take Medicaid. That's I think one thing that separates me from a lot of companies in Miami where I only do commercial insurance and private pay. I don't work with Medicaid at all. But when I started in the field, there was like that rise in MedWaiver, Medicaid, and then I think maybe like 2 years after is when commercial insurances started covering ABA.
So you said you take private pay. So
Yes.
I know you're in the Miami area. Has that been good for your business model to take private pay compared to insurance?
Well, so I would say we have like 10% of our clients are private pay. The rest are fully insurance, and we have some scholarships that cover the services. But yes, so it's only like 10%.
Okay, that's not bad. I really thought you were going to say it was even more because I know I've talked to some people, and especially further south, it seems like they're all on private pay, which I can imagine as you go further south, it does get money wise. I say it does change a little bit, not drastically. I mean, certainly up north. I mean, in North Florida, I see it, but down south, I just hear it so often. So I was just curious. So with you being in it in owning your practice for 14 years, can you just describe some of the ups and downs and what you've learned over that time?
Every day there's ups and downs. Like right now, I want to say we're going through a down because of this whole situation with the cyber attack on change.com, which I know a lot of private practices are, and medical practices as well, are going through. But there's always ups and downs, right? And I think there are moments as well where I felt discouraged, where I have felt like, what the heck am I doing? Like, can I even do this? Like, who do I think I am, right? So some of that imposter syndrome. But then something happens and it gets resolved, and you're like, oh, okay, I was able to work through that. I think what makes being an entrepreneur fun are the ups and downs. And I know it sounds like crazy, right? But if I didn't have the downs, it would be really boring and it wouldn't really motivate me, at least me. So I think definitely you're going to always have ups and downs. And I think when you're working with commercial insurance, when you're working with people in general, you're always going to face those challenges. It just comes with what we do.
I like that you said that you need the downs, yes, to sell. Yes, so when you're up high, you can really celebrate and also help other people too that are down below. Because I know I've always reached out to people about various things. Even now, even though I'm in a different world, I still just ask because it all kind of runs together. A business is a business. You're all going to run through the same thing: cash flow and just recruiting. And one of the questions I'm going to ask you is what I know everybody else is dealing with is what is your secret to hiring? Because I just saw you had was it a boot camp?
Yeah, an orientation. So, what is my secret to hiring? So, even after 14 years of doing this, I do my own hiring. So, I do my interviews. I interview everyone who comes in. I sometimes have staff that help me with it when I just have too much, work, but I do the orientations as well. So I want to be the first person that the applicant meets. And I want to be the one that screens them. And obviously I'm a psychologist, so that helps. I'm already kind of like screening them for red flags. But of course, there are times where you just miss it. You just, you don't notice these things. But I think just being very proactive, like I have a good process where if we have clients coming in that need staffing, my clinical coordinator tells me, hey, we need to hire more people. I put the ad, I start looking for people, and then we just get the ball going. So I just think I'm really quick when it comes to staffing. Of course, we're all in the same field and we understand the attrition and how many of our BTs are kind of like, and BCBAs and BCABAs are kind of like just moving from place to
Mhm.
place. So that's always going to be a challenge. But I think really good at being very honest with them, very straightforward. And orientation is where I go over like, look, we're going to have expectations. This field is not easy. This field is really tough. You're going to get, you know, beaten up sometimes. You're gonna get slapped. You're gonna get I mean, right? Like I feel like nowadays the new people coming to the field, like they think it's all like, oh, I'm gonna work on verbal behavior. I'm like, no, you're going to
No.
get hit. And you have to be open to that, right? And,
Oh
and if
God.
you're not, this is not the field for you. Choose to do that now. Don't waste people's time. So I'm very blunt, I'm very straightforward with them. So I think the ones that stay after that, they're like, okay, we're gonna do this together.
It, gosh, so you don't hear that very often that, at this point that you're doing the hiring and the interviewing, because I know at this point you have people that could do it, but I can imagine, with your being psychologists, the red flags to look for that maybe somebody else might miss. I can only imagine the questions you might ask during the interview. But I do want to close it out. If you could give one piece of advice to any person that's entrepreneur, especially if they're looking to go into the behavioral health field and start a business, what would that one key advice be?
Make sure that this is really what you want to do. And the reason why I say that, it's because a lot of people think about the glam. Oh, I want to have my own business. I, have free time. It's not like that. So someone who's really done it can tell you there's going to be tons of ups and downs. It's going to mess with your relationships. It's going to mess with your self-esteem. It's going to mess with you, with your money, with everything. So you really have to want to do it for the right reason.
Well, you just heard it. You have to do it for the right reason. I just want to thank Dr. Monica Gilbert for coming on the Behavioral Business Blueprint, and we will listen to us next time. Bye.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank. I was trying to stop.